First contact under fire. Admiral Zextra of the Galactic Alliance stared at the holographic battle map with 4 of her eyes, while her remaining 2 tracked the incoming damage reports. The Nexus Empire's latest offensive had pushed through 3 more defensive lines in the past solar cycle. Their quantum-shifted warships simply appeared wherever they pleased. Their dark matter cannons tore through the Alliance's best shields like they weren't even there, and their AI-driven tactical systems anticipated every conventional strategy. High Command confirms the fall of the Centaur's arm, her second in command. Commander Riv reported grimly. His crystalline form flickered with patterns of deep indigo, the color of mourning among his species. That's another 12 billion civilians under Nexus control. Zextra's mandibles clicked in frustration. The Alliance had united 17 spacefaring civilizations, each with thousands of years of technological advancement. Yet here they were, being systematically dismantled by the Nexus Empire's superior technology. Their enemy had seemingly appeared from nowhere 2 years ago, bringing weapons and defenses that seemed to defy the known laws of physics. "Admiral," one of her sensor officers called out, their tentacles writhing in excitement. "We're detecting unusual energy signatures from Sector 2814. It's a primitive radio transmission." "Radio?" Riv asked incredulously. "Nobody's used radio waves for interstellar communication in millennia. The background radiation alone would." "Play it," Zextra ordered. A scratchy voice filled the command center. "This is Captain Sarah Chen of the Earth Defense Force. We've been monitoring your war. We'd like to help." The bridge crew exchanged confused looks. Earth, the primitive world that had barely achieved spaceflight. The species still using chemical rockets and projectile weapons. "Patch me through," Zextra commanded. "This is Admiral Zextra of the Galactic Alliance. While we appreciate the offer, Earth has not yet achieved the technological advancement to—" "With respect, Admiral," Captain Chen interrupted, "we've been watching. Your enemy uses quantum displacement for tactical positioning, dark matter manipulation for weapons, predictive AI for strategy, and you're fighting them like they're a conventional force." Zextra's antenna twitched. "You've been studying our battles. We've been studying everything. Every encounter, every tactic, every response. We may be primitive by your standards, but humans have thousands of years of experience fighting against superior forces. Sometimes the most advanced solution isn't the best solution." As if to punctuate Chen's words, a priority alert flashed across the tactical display. 3 Nexus dreadnoughts had quantum-shifted into the nearby Proxima system. In minutes, they would be in range to attack the Alliance's primary shipyards. "If you have a suggestion, Captain Chen, now would be the time," Zextra said. "We do, but you'll need to trust us, and you'll need to accept that what we're about to propose will seem primitive." Riv's crystalline form pulsed with skepticism. "Admiral, surely you're not considering—" Zextra raised a limb for silence, considering their options. The Alliance had tried everything else. Their most advanced weapons and brilliant strategies had failed. Perhaps it was time for a different approach. "Tell me more, Captain Chen. Ever heard of something called a Faraday cage, Admiral? Or how about electromagnetic pulse weapons? Sometimes the old ways are the best ways." As Chen began explaining their plan, Zextra felt her mandibles twitch in what passed for a smile among her species. Perhaps these humans understood something that the Alliance had forgotten in their rush to advance technology. Sometimes the simplest solution was the most elegant. And sometimes being primitive wasn't the same as being unsophisticated. The art of the impossible. The Alliance's primary command center had never seen anything quite like the human delegation. While other species attended via hologram or neural interface, Captain Chen and her team insisted on being physically present. They arrived in what looked like primitive environmental suits, carrying actual physical documents and analog devices that made the Alliance's advanced sensors struggle to understand. "Your enemy's greatest strength is their predictive AI," Chen explained, spreading paper maps across the conference table. Another human insistence. They've recorded every battle, every tactic, every response in the galaxy's history, but they've never encountered Earth. Admiral Zextra watched as Chen's team began setting up what they called a sandbox demonstration. Lieutenant James Rodriguez, their tactical officer, poured actual sand into a container and began shaping it. "This is how we still train our military leaders," Rodriguez explained, noticing the bemused looks from the Alliance representatives. "Physical models, analog simulations, things that can't be hacked, predicted, or quantum shifted." Commander Riv's crystalline form pulsed with barely contained skepticism. "You're suggesting we fight a war against the most advanced civilization we've ever encountered using sand?" "No," Chen smiled. "We're suggesting we fight them using everything they've forgotten about. Tell me, when was the last time the Nexus Empire had to deal with radio interference, with mechanical computers, with projectile weapons that don't rely on energy signatures?" Dr. Maya Patel, the human team's chief engineer, stepped forward. She held up what looked like a primitive metal sphere. "This is what we call a HMP device, high-altitude electromagnetic pulse. One of these in the right place can disable every piece of advanced electronics within a 1,000-kilometer radius. No quantum calculations, no AI predictions, no dark matter manipulation." The Alliance leaders stirred uncomfortably. The idea of deliberately disabling advanced technology seemed almost heretical. But they couldn't deny the logic. "Their quantum drives require incredible precision," Patel continued. "Their dark matter weapons need constant computational adjustments. Their AI requires massive data processing. Take those away, even for a few seconds, and their advantages become vulnerabilities." Zextra finished, her mandibles clicking thoughtfully. Chen nodded. "Humanity spent centuries fighting asymmetric warfare. Sometimes the most advanced army can be defeated by the simplest weapons. The Nexus Empire has forgotten what it's like to fight without their technology. We haven't. But surely they'll detect these primitive weapons," Riv objected. Rodriguez grinned. "That's the beauty of it. Their sensors are designed to detect energy weapons, quantum signatures, dark matter manipulation. Try to find a properly shielded metal box in space using only quantum sensors. It's like trying to find a shadow with a light meter." The next hour was a crash course in what the humans called back-to-basics warfare. They outlined plans for massive Faraday nets that could disrupt quantum shifting, kinetic bombardment weapons that used simple gravity instead of exotic physics, communication systems so primitive they were invisible to advanced scanning. "We've been preparing these countermeasures since we first detected your war," Chen revealed. "We knew eventually we'd face threats with superior technology, so we developed ways to fight them." "Your entire species knew about us?" Zextra asked, surprised. "No," Chen said quietly. "Most of Earth still thinks they're alone in the universe. But some of us have been watching, planning, preparing. Because that's what humans do. We prepare for the worst while hoping for the best." Riv's crystalline form had shifted from skeptical purple to intrigued green. "How long would it take to implement these strategies?" "We already have everything built," Chen revealed. "We just needed to know someone would listen to our primitive ideas." Zextra looked at the sand table model, the paper maps, the mechanical devices that seemed like relics from a forgotten age. The Alliance had spent so long advancing their technology, they'd forgotten that sometimes the old ways had advantages of their own. "Tell us what you need, Captain," the Admiral said. "It's time to teach the Nexus Empire that primitive doesn't mean defenseless." In the next 12 hours, Earth vessels began appearing from hidden positions throughout Alliance space. They weren't the sleek, advanced ships everyone expected. They were bulky, covered in what looked like metal mesh, bristling with analog instruments and mechanical systems. They looked out of place among the Alliance's quantum ships, which was exactly the point. The first phase of humanity's plan was about to begin. And the Nexus Empire was about to learn that sometimes the deadliest weapon is the one your sensors can't see. Operation Trojan Horse. The Nexus Empire's warships emerged from quantum space exactly where the Alliance's predictive models said they would. The Arcturus shipyards. 3 massive dreadnoughts, each carrying enough firepower to level a continent, accompanied by their standard escort fleet of destroyers and corvettes. They're right on schedule. Captain Chen's voice came through the old-style radio channel. Her ship, the EDF Damascus, looked almost primitive next to the Alliance's advanced vessels. Its hull was covered in what appeared to be a mesh of copper wire, and its profile was deliberately asymmetrical, a chaos of angles and protrusions that made no sense to modern military doctrine. Admiral Zextra watched from her command center as the human fleet moved into position. They'd insisted on using their own formations, which seemed random and inefficient to Alliance tactical computers. But that was precisely the point. All ships maintain radio silence except for designated channels, Chen ordered. Remember your training. No quantum comms, no AI assistance, no advanced sensors. Do it the old way. The Nexus fleet moved with their usual precision, their AI systems already calculating optimal firing solutions and predicted defensive patterns. But something was wrong. Their quantum sensors were having trouble getting clear readings on the human ships. The irregular hull designs and lack of energy signatures confused their targeting systems. They're broadcasting their standard demands for surrender, Riv reported from his station. His crystalline form now showed traces of anticipation. Bright yellow streaks among the usual blue. Let them think we're considering it, Zextra replied. Captain Chen. Phase 1 ready, Chen confirmed, waiting for them to fully commit to their attack vector. The Nexus fleet moved closer, spreading out into their characteristic assault formation. Their dark matter cannons began to power up, creating distortions in spacetime itself. According to their AI predictions, this would be another swift victory against inferior forces. They never saw the trap until it was too late. HEMP devices, deploy now, Chen ordered. From the seemingly random protrusions on the human ships, hundreds of small objects launched into space. The Nexus sensors registered them briefly as debris or primitive missiles, not worth prioritizing. Their AI calculated a 99.9% chance that their quantum shields could handle any kinetic impact. But these weren't weapons. They were keys to unlock the cage. The electromagnetic pulses detonated in a carefully choreographed sequence, creating overlapping fields of disruption. In an instant, every piece of advanced technology within the target zone went dark. Quantum shields flickered and died. Dark matter weapons lost containment. AI systems crashed as their quantum processors failed. All ships implement Faraday protocols, Chen commanded. The mesh covering the human ships suddenly made sense. They were giant Faraday cages, protected from the very chaos they'd just unleashed. The Alliance ships, following human specifications, had been similarly modified. Phase 2, commence, Zextra ordered. From hidden positions, Earth's kinetic weapons platforms revealed themselves. They weren't elegant or advanced, just mass drivers using simple Newtonian physics to accelerate metal slugs to relativistic speeds. No energy signatures to detect, no complex systems to fail, just the inexorable mathematics of mass times acceleration. The Nexus ships, their quantum defenses offline, were suddenly vulnerable to these primitive weapons. The first salvo struck home with devastating effect, ripping through advanced hull materials that had never been designed to withstand simple kinetic impacts. They're trying to quantum shift, Riv reported, his crystalline form pulsing with excitement. Let them try, Chen said grimly. Hard to calculate quantum coordinates when your computers are fried. And even harder when space itself isn't quite what you think it is. The human fleet had seeded the entire area with gravity distortion devices, not the advanced kind that the Nexus used, but simple rotating masses creating unpredictable gravitational fluctuations, just enough to make quantum calculations impossible without computer assistance. The mighty Nexus fleet, terror of the galaxy, found itself trapped in normal space, fighting with crippled systems against an enemy their superior technology couldn't even properly detect. "This is Admiral Zextra to all ships," she broadcast on the simple radio frequency. "Execute attack pattern Human Alpha. Show them what happens when they face an enemy they didn't predict." As the combined Alliance human fleet moved in for the kill, Chen's voice came through one final time. "Remember, everyone. Sometimes the best technology is the technology your enemy has forgotten how to fight." The battle that followed would change the face of warfare in the galaxy forever. And it was only the beginning. The tables turn. The victory at Arcturus changed everything. Within days, the Nexus Empire pulled back their forward fleets, regrouping as they tried to understand how their superior technology had been so thoroughly defeated. But Captain Chen knew better than to celebrate too early. "They're adapting," she reported during the emergency council meeting. "Our latest intelligence shows they're retrofitting their ships with analog backup systems. The HEMP attacks won't be as effective next time." Admiral Zextra's antenna twitched thoughtfully. The Alliance war room had changed in the weeks since the humans arrived. Holographic displays now sat beside physical maps. Quantum computers worked alongside mechanical calculators. They had learned to embrace both the advanced and the primitive. "Then we'll need to adapt faster," the Admiral replied. "What's our next move?" Lieutenant Rodriguez stepped forward, his hands covered in graphite from drawing tactical diagrams. "They expect us to rely on the same tricks. So we don't. We give them something new, something old." He unveiled a series of drawings that made several Alliance officers step back in shock. The designs seemed to defy everything they knew about modern warfare. "We call it Operation Lighthouse," Dr. Paddle explained. "The Nexus Empire relies on quantum scanning to detect threats, so we're going to give them so many threats to scan that their systems overload." The plan was audacious. Thousands of small, automated drones, each one little more than a metal shell containing a fusion reactor and a quantum signature generator. They would flood Nexus space with false readings, phantom fleets appearing and disappearing faster than even their AI could process. "But the real attack," Chen continued, "will come from ships running completely dark. No power emissions, no quantum signatures, nothing but momentum and patience." Commander Riv's crystalline form flickered with concern. "You're talking about deliberately sending crews into battle without shields, without weapons powered, without anything that can be detected," Chen finished. "Sometimes the best place to hide is in plain sight." The next phase of the war unfolded like nothing the galaxy had ever seen. The Nexus Empire found their sophisticated sensor networks overwhelmed by phantom signals. Their AI tactical systems crashed trying to calculate responses to fleets that didn't exist. And in the chaos, real ships, running on minimal power, crews working by red emergency lighting and manual controls, slipped through their defenses. "Contact in Sector 7. A Nexus commander would shout, their sensors detecting a massive fleet signature. They would redirect forces to intercept, only to find empty space. Meanwhile, Alliance ships would drift past their lines using nothing but precisely calculated trajectories and gravitational assists. But the humans weren't done innovating. They introduced what they called foxfire, clouds of electrically charged particles that played havoc with quantum communications. They revived ancient techniques of naval warfare, using stellar phenomena as cover just as Earth's sailors once used weather and terrain. The Nexus Empire found themselves fighting an enemy they couldn't predict, couldn't track, and increasingly couldn't understand. Their attempts to adapt to human tactics only made them more vulnerable to new ones. "They're trying to think like us now," Rodriguez observed during a tactical briefing. "That's exactly what we want, because they're not built for it." He was right. The Nexus Empire's greatest strength, their rigid adherence to advanced technology and AI-driven warfare, had become their greatest weakness. Every time they tried to develop countermeasures to human tactics, they created new vulnerabilities that the Alliance could exploit. The tide of war began to turn, not in dramatic space battles with massive fleets, but in small, clever engagements where primitive ingenuity overcame advanced technology. The Alliance learned to think differently about warfare, combining their advanced capabilities with human unconventional thinking. But the Nexus Empire had one final card to play. As their conventional forces faltered, they prepared to unveil a weapon so devastating it would force the galaxy to submit or face extinction. They hadn't counted on humanity having prepared for that too. Victory's price. The Nexus Empire's ultimate weapon wasn't a weapon at all, at least not in the conventional sense. It was a quantum resonance cascade, designed to alter the fundamental constants of space-time itself within a targeted region. Any civilization caught in its effect would find their technology, their sciences, even their basic physics rendered obsolete. They're going to rewrite reality itself, Dr. Paddle explained, her usually steady hand shaking as she reviewed the intercepted data. Everything we've built, everything we know about science and technology. It would all stop working. The Alliance Council chamber had fallen silent. Even the most advanced civilizations among them struggled to comprehend the scale of the threat. But Captain Chen was smiling. "They still don't understand us, do they?" she said quietly. "They think changing the rules means they win. They forget that humans thrive on changing rules." The plan that followed was perhaps the most audacious yet. While the Alliance fleet engaged the Nexus Empire's remaining forces in a series of feints and diversions, Earth unveiled its true contribution to the war effort, something they called the Babel Protocol. "We've spent centuries imagining ways that reality itself might change," Rodriguez explained as he coordinated the fleet movements. "Time dilation, alternate dimensions, parallel universes, we've written stories about them all. And we've imagined how to fight in them." The Nexus Empire's quantum resonance cascade began its activation sequence. Their remaining ships gathered around it in a defensive formation that their AI calculated to be perfect. They were prepared for every possible counterattack their predictive models could conceive. They weren't prepared for what actually happened. As the cascade reached critical threshold, humanity's true weapon revealed itself. Not a counter-weapon or a shield, but something far simpler and far more devastating. From hidden positions throughout the galaxy, thousands of automated transmitters activated simultaneously, broadcasting a signal that the Nexus Empire's AI systems interpreted as valid command code. "The thing about advanced AI," Chen explained later, "is that it has to trust its inputs, has to trust that reality matches its models. So what happens when every sensor, every quantum detector, every input channel suddenly starts telling it that 2 + 2 = 5? The result was catastrophic. For the Nexus Empire, their entire command and control structure collapsed as their AI systems encountered what humans called a logic bomb. Unable to reconcile conflicting inputs, unable to trust their own sensors, their mighty fleet was reduced to chaos. The cascade fired, and did absolutely nothing. The human transmitters had created a quantum interference pattern that turned the weapon's effect back on itself, trapping it in an endless loop of recursive reality modifications that canceled each other out. "That's the real difference between us," Admiral Zextra realized as she watched the Nexus Empire's fleet tear itself apart in confusion. They built their civilization on the assumption that technology always moves forward, always becomes more advanced. Humans built theirs on the assumption that everything can fail, and planned accordingly. The war ended not with a grand battle, but with surrender. The Nexus Empire, its technology rendered unreliable by human countermeasures, its AI systems no longer trustworthy, had no choice but to accept defeat. In the years that followed, the galaxy changed. The Alliance learned from humanity's example, developing new technologies while preserving knowledge of the old. They built redundancies, fallbacks, and analog alternatives into everything. They learned to think not just about how to make things work, but about how they might fail, and how to continue fighting when they did. "The funny thing is," Captain Chen said during the victory celebration, We were never really late to the war at all. We were right on time. We just took a different path to get here." Admiral Zextra's mandibles clicked in what had become a familiar expression of amusement. "And what path is humanity planning to take next?" Chen looked out at the stars, where Alliance and Earth ships now patrolled together, their designs a strange but effective blend of the advanced and the primitive. "That's the best part about humans, Admiral. We never take just one path. We take them all, and usually invent a few new ones along the way. The galaxy would never be the same. And that, everyone agreed, was probably for the best." The end.